Monday, May 11th. It is 6:05 p.m. We are beginning our Board of Education meeting tonight. In the district office with myself is Enrique Catalan, our Assistant Superintendent for Business, and Greg Cavalieri, our videographer and technician for our virtual board meetings. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Abraham.
Hi, good evening. As Joe already said, today is Monday, May 11th. Can I just get a roll call of the board members who are present? I'll call you out and say here so that the public knows who's present, and also for our district clerk, Carmen, to note it. So, Mary Pat? Here. Barbara Pedersen? Here. Lisa Anderson? Here. Bill Riccio?
Here.
Corey Natrika?
Here.
And Lori Ryan is not here this evening. All right, so can I get a motion to start the meeting?
So moved. Second.
Any
By Bill.
favor? Okay, so the meeting is now open, and our first item on the agenda is to approve the agenda as stated. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda as stated, please?
So moved. Second by Bill.
Any nays? Anybody object? Okay, would anybody like to pull anything from the consent agenda tonight? Which we actually don't even have a consent agenda. Okay. Moving on, our next item on the agenda is our superintendent's report.
Yeah, we added two documents for the public to view. These documents are also on our budget website.
Joe, are you still there?
Oh, yes. Hello. I'm sorry. We were muted. We added two documents to the superintendent's report because it's important that these are part of the record and memorialized. They also reside on our Board of Education website, particularly our budget development page. The first document talks about our contingency. So a lot of discussion about what happens if a school budget fails. And over the last 7 years, the average tax increase in our school district has been 1.04%. And we haven't really paid too much attention or spent too much time discussing what a failed budget can mean. But given some of our circumstances and certainly the process in which the public will vote on this year's school budget on June 9th, we felt it was important to spell it out a little bit more. There's great risk to any school district, especially the Hendrick Hudson School District, if our budget fails. Typically, when a budget fails, a school board has a number of options. One option is to put up another budget for a revote, and a second option is to immediately adopt a contingent budget. And what this document does, I'm not going to read it line for line, but it gets into some breadth and depth with what happens when a school district adopts a contingent budget. The reason we're providing these details this year is because under the governor's executive order, he pushed our school board vote out a number of weeks. And there is statute in the state education department that says that if a school budget fails, a revote or adoption of contingency needs to happen within a finite period of time. What we don't know is if any number of budgets fail across New York State, whether or not the governor will amend that timeline to allow school boards and the school community to review its budget and make some necessary adjustments for it to hopefully be successful on a second vote. The issue is there's a truncated timeline. So we wanted to make sure that the public understood the process of adopting a contingency budget and what would happen in a contingency budget. And just some of the big 30,000-foot talking points is that the district would need to make an additional $2.6 million in reductions. These reductions would primarily be from staff, which then would implement our ability to continue to provide outstanding programs for our students. A contingent budget also controls some of the spending and obviously the expenses from a school district. For example, a school district is not allowed to spend money on certain equipment and field trips, extracurricular activities, summer school expenses, among other expenses as well. We also would have to seriously consider reducing some of our non-mandated programs. Those are not discussions we have had in the last few years, but some board members have been around when a budget did fail in Hendrick Hudson, I believe in 2008. And that was not a fun process for the board or the school district or the community to go through because a lot of people lost their jobs and a lot of programs were reduced. And this board over the last 10 years has worked tirelessly to restore those programs, including elementary librarians, including math coaches, bolstering our high school curriculum to offer college courses and Project Lead the Way and other fine nationally recognized programs. So it's important that we communicate this to the public because there's great risk. There's great risk to kids. There's great risk to our ability to continue to provide world-class programs that our parents and community members have expected. And what we know in New York State is that if a school district doesn't have resources and a school district doesn't perform, that's the number one indicator of your property value. And as our one of our resident real estate agents, Don Dwyer, who's been giving us reports about every 6 months, property value in the Hendrick Hudson School District continues to climb over the last number of years, and certainly with all that's going on right now, socially and in our economy, we want to do all that we can to protect that big investment that we make throughout our lifetime. So that's a document for the public to review. It will be included in our budget newsletter, which we're developing, and as I said earlier, it resides on our budget webpage. Are there any questions about a contingent budget? You may need to answer them. Okay, we'll move on to the next document that we provided. Is a highlight, at the 30,000 foot level of all of the cost savings the district has experienced, different projects, different programs over the last at least 10 years, but specifically since Indian Point announced its closure in January of 2017. You don't have an average tax increase of 1.04%. Without looking at the operations side of the organization and without trying to find efficiencies and without tightening the belt. And I'm not going to belabor these topics because, again, these will be in our budget newsletter as well as on our website. But this district and this school community has worked really, really hard to save money, to drive those resources to kids and programs. Throughout the last 10 years, the district has had various audits, from transportation to energy audits, to try to save resources, to be more efficient with our busing schedule, with the fuel that we use, with our staffing. The energy performance contracts and efficiency audits are to make sure that we're using all of our technology to the greatest extent so that we're efficient with the operations of the district. This also includes a very aggressive plan the board approved a number of years ago to place solar panels on the rooftops of various school buildings that would drive down our expenses to continue to make our district very, very affordable, if not the most affordable Westchester suburban school district in Westchester. We've developed tuition-based programs, specifically our ABC program that brings in a great deal of unanticipated revenue, so we can educate our own students in Hendrick Hudson, but also provide those outstanding programs for neighboring districts as well at a reduced cost, but certainly an opportunity for the district to create some revenue. Most recently, our cost analysis around school reorganization. That was a study the board commissioned back in the early fall of 2018 that we're going through the process of identifying whether or not we can experience savings by reorganizing elementary students. That potentially could bring in around $2 million of increased savings for our budget and for our taxpayers. So this is a really important document for the public to understand that behind the scenes, there's always activity to try to sharpen our pencil and tighten our belt. And I think it's important, especially now with our economy on hold and the government trying to figure out ways to stimulate the economy, that our public understands that we've been forward thinking in these areas for quite some time, and we've had board members with us for at least 10 years who have championed this. So it's important that we communicate it, especially now, so the public understands that we take these opportunities seriously, and we try to use those opportunities to seize all the savings that we can when appropriate. Any questions on that document? Okay, well, that's a good precursor to our budget presentation. Again, with the governor's executive order of last Friday and our truncated timeline.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
This is all good information, and I know the board doesn't have a lot of questions because we've heard this quite a few times in our meetings. And is this being shared with the coronavirus issues going on currently? Is the PTA still getting updated via any kind of video conferencing meetings? I know you and Enrique typically give out a lot of information at school meetings about the budget. Have you been able to do that given the coronavirus?
Yeah, twice. In fact, twice in the last 6 weeks we've been out. We've had 2 video conference calls with the PTA presidents, most recently last Thursday. So we walked them through the status of our budget and other district functions. And with the board approving the budget tonight, we'll meet again in the next couple of weeks. We agreed to meet before Memorial Day to go over the budget and help them communicate different aspects of the budget to their families. So yes, we've been meeting, and they still play a very vital role in helping communicate this information to their parents.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. So for our next presentation, for the budget presentation, we are going to do a format similar to what we did last time. Enrique will go through the complete presentation, and then I will call on each of you individually for comments and questions. And we'll do it in the same order we did roll call. So it'll be Mary, Pat, Barbara, Lisa, Bill, and then Corey. Okay? Thank you.
Hello everyone, it's Enrique. I hope everyone is safe and well. This is the last of our presentations, and this is the presentation where you can ask all the questions before you approve or disapprove the budget as is. So we're going to start now. Back in January 8th, when we started this budget process, we talked about a budget between $81.6 and $82.6 million. In March 25, and since then we haven't made any changes. We all work very hard to get to the $82.1 million. Last year the budget was $80 million, so it's an increase of $2 million or 2.62%. Tax levy is a big increase, but so everyone knows, the whole increase is due to the Hendrick pilot. If Indian Point had not closed, our tax levy would be a decrease rather than an increase. We lost more money in the pilot than what our tax levy is going up. Our tax levy is going up 5.96%. The New York State cap is 1.81%. It means that inflation in New York State was 1.81% last year. So that's below the 2% maximum, so that's what the New York State cap is. Our Hendrick cap is 11.34. And last week I updated the board with new numbers, an increasing number of our pilot payments. However, I don't want to include it in a presentation, first of all, because we haven't signed the agreement with Hendrick. Hendrick sent us an email saying that they agree. Lawyers are preparing the agreement. So that's reason number one why I kept the 11.34%. Reason number two is that about 3 weeks ago, it was the deadline to set our cap with SED and the state controller. And I cannot change it suddenly without, before everything happens. So I will have to talk to SED and the state controller. They will have to open the portal just for me so I can change the number. Because in this case it doesn't matter, but you can imagine that if we were close to the number, it would have mattered. But I will do that probably in June when they open the portal just for us. So I kept the number with the increase in the pilot. Our cap will go down from 11.3% to 9.91%. We're still way below that. And this is a summary of all our revenues. And again, because none of the revenues that we discussed last week are for certain and the pilot will make up the difference, I decided to leave them as they were. State aid is an increase of 12.9%, and this is without the reduction of $160,000. BOE stays the same at $697. It's an increase of 2.5%. Other income is $1.1 million. I didn't reduce the $450,000 that we discussed. I'm sorry, the $125,000 that we discussed last week in interest income. Sales tax, $1.2 million. I didn't decrease the $450,000 that we discussed last week. Transfers, $80,000. Fund balance, $3 million. Fund balance, I didn't add the $126,000 that we discussed last year. And pilots, $23.5 million. For a total of $35.7 million of non-property tax revenues. Our proposed budget, that is what you are voting for, is $82.1 million, an increase of 2.62%, and our tax levy increase 5.96%. Like Joe just said, if you look at our tax levy and our budgets in the past several years, we've always been one of the lowest up until this year, and that's basically due to the Hendrick closure. On the revenue side, here you can see very clearly how the pie is divided. Tax levy represents 56% of our revenues, pilots represent 29%, and fund balance about 4%, and the rest are the rest of the revenues that we just discussed. Expense codes, as you can see, most of our expenses are fixed costs, and most of them are salaries. Out of a budget of $82 million, $43 million are salaries. And if you add the benefits, then you have about 70% of our expenses going to, obviously, the people who work in this district. We are a service industry, and therefore most of our expenses go to people. As always, we always have to present the budget in the three categories by the government accounting, curriculum and instruction, that as you can see is by far the biggest. Capital budget, that includes all our debt and all the costs to maintain our facilities, and then the administrative budget, which is the budget for all administration. And that's it for my presentation, Carol. So now anyone that has any questions or comments, I'm ready to answer.
All right, so Mary Pat, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I do. I just had one. As we went through the preliminary budget, you talked about like state aid is decreasing, sales tax, and the all those changes in the fund balance and such. What is the actual number of non-property tax revenue you have here for $35,700,000? What is the actual amount? I mean, I appreciate the fact that you couldn't change it. You can't change it immediately. But what is the number? I know it's being offset by the other funds, but I'm just is it the same number?
It's exactly the same number again. Like I mentioned last week.
The allocations are different.
Like I mentioned last week. Between our losses and our increases, there were about $160,000 that we were short, and I will add it to fund balance. But that number has to be the same because the tax levy didn't change and the budget expense didn't change. So one drives the other one.
Yes, but that's what I'm saying. So basically, that number is always going to stay the same. It's just
exactly.
The allocations above.
Exactly.
These numbers are not necessarily reflective because of everything that's going on, all these changes.
Exactly. The numbers is just going to switch from one to the other account, but the final number will be the same.
Okay. That's what I just wanted to be clear on that. All right. Other than that, no, thank you. As awful as all this has been, I mean, to keep it at 6%, 5.96 is still, that represents a lot of hard work. So, and a lot of planning, which, is very much appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Pat. It was very important to clarify that point. Barbara, you're next. Do you have any questions or comments?
I don't have any questions. I just, like Mary Pat, would like to say thank you for the diligent efforts of everybody who worked on this. And Enrique, thank you, because I know it's been a very daunting task with, the numbers that have kept coming in from the governor's office. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lisa, you're up next.
Okay. I would also like to say thank you, and I know that we realize that, I don't know if everybody else does out there listening, just the great changes that have happened with our school budgets, uncertainty surrounding them, and so really this team here, our administrative team, has really done a Herculean effort, I feel, to make sure that we are able to stay within the parameters that we had. And so, just, well.
Thank you.
Bill, you're next.
This has been a phenomenal challenge for the district, this budget, the beginning of the Entergy effect of losing Entergy money. And I think it's important that people understand that although some of these increases might sound larger, they are larger than what we've had in the past, that these have been, the numbers have been gone over many times, and a lot of cost savings have been implemented to get it down to these numbers. So the community needs
Thank you, Bill. And again, I just want to remind everyone that our tax levy increase in dollars is less than what we lost in pilot payments. So if Entergy had not left us, this would have been a tax levy decrease.
Thank you, Bill and Enrique. Corey, you are last on the list.
Yeah, there's not much more to add here. I mean, it seems like every time we turn around, first we got cut off at the knees with Indian Point, and now we get cut off towards the hips. What's going on? So it's, I have to really commend the administration for keeping the increases, manageable compared to what they could have been. It's going to be tough on everybody, even with what it is, but it could have been so much worse. And I think people need to remember that perspective that, not only were we in a tough situation before, now we're in a tough situation at this point. I think with all the board members who work so diligently and everyone else on the team in the administration, I just got to say thank you as a community member, not just as a board member, for all the great work you've been doing.
Thank you, Corey.
Thank you very much for that, Corey. I also do not have any questions. I would like to commend Enrique and Joe and our administrators for working so hard on this budget. It is every year an arduous process, but especially this year. So we do have a resolution that we need to do a roll call for to pass, and the resolution says that resolves that the Board of Education of the Hendrick Hudson School District be authorized to expend the sum of $82,137,880 during the fiscal year 2020-2021 and a general tax levied thereof. Carmen, would you like me to call the roll, or would you like to call the roll?
Whatever you'd like to do, Carolyn. You want to call it, or you want me to? Doesn't matter to me.
I'll call the roll. Okay, so on our list here, I'm the first one to be called, and I say yes. Lisa?
Yes.
Mary Pat
Yes.
Corey Notrica?
Yes.
William Maricchio?
Yes.
Barbara Pedersen?
Yes.
And Lori Ryan is absent this evening. So the board resolution passes by a unanimous vote of the members present. You got that right, Carmen?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you very much, everybody. That brings us to our audience comment section. And we do not have any audience comments this evening. So that brings us to our board comments or new business. For our board comments and new business, I just have a question. I know today was the deadline for board trustee petitions to be in. Joe, do you have any information on whether we have people who are stepping forward and how many?
Yes, and just as a reminder to those watching now or who will watch later, part of the governor's executive order in the vote by absentee ballot process for the budget this year is vote by absentee ballot for school board trustees. And in the executive order, he created a new timeline where residents who met certain criteria needed to identify themselves and complete some very basic paperwork, much more basic than in years past, and submit that to the board clerk by 5 p.m. today. 2 individuals did so, Corey Notrica, one of our current board members, as well as Alexandra Philbin. And they were the only 2 that submitted paperwork and that met the deadline. So those 2 names, and only those 2 names, will be on the ballot for the public to consider. They're the only 2 people running for 2 seats, and it's our understanding that they're given the executive order that there is no write-in opportunity. So our understanding is, since they're the only two that will be on the ballot, that they'll be sworn in at our reorganization meeting in early July. So congratulations.
Congratulations to both of you, and thank you very much, Joe. Does anybody have any comments or new business that they would like to bring up at this point? All right, then can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Seconded by Bill.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any objecting? Very good. Thank you very much. Have a good evening, everybody. And